So Reform UK is on the rise in the Red Wall. Nigel Farage is parking his tanks on Labour's lawn. I mean, we could talk a bit about this, but he gave a major speech earlier this week saying that he would reverse many of the changes that Starmer has brought in on welfare, particularly the winter fuel allowance, reversing also the Conservatives' two-child benefit cap.
Lifting the two-child cap is the right thing to do. Not because we support a benefits culture, but because we believe for lower paid workers, this actually makes having children just a little bit easier.
The polling seems to bear out that this new message is popular. I mean, prior to that, he was talking about renationalising steel as well, sort of he's tacking to the left. New polls suggest that he is more than 11 points clear of Labour in the Red Wall. Another poll suggests that he's the most popular candidate for Prime Minister in the Red Wall. Tom, what have you made of?
No, I think that last one is really fascinating. This Merlin Strategies poll, which puts Farage as having the highest kind of net favourability of various different politicians in the country. I mean, there's only 4 in that survey who are in the positive, and 3 of which are normally on the right of British politics.
Yeah.
You've got Farage out in front. You've got Andy Burnham coming a close second, the single kind of centre-left character there. You know, he's Greater Manchester Mayor, kind of makes sense. And then Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick. So it really just sort of is telling how, despite the fact that many kind of Red Wall constituencies did fall back to Labour, it's not as if this was a clear return to the flock of Labour's heartlands, that it's quite clear that it's not Labour which is speaking to, broadly speaking, their concerns. And it's really clearly put the wind up Keir Starmer. He's having to go around constantly talking about his background, as if we hadn't heard about that before. And in response, you got Farage challenging him to a debate in a working men's club, which I would pay good money to see. So we can only hope that will actually come to pass. I doubt that it will. But it's a reminder that when Reform say that we are the party of workers, they've got a point. Yeah. Certainly much more than the Labour Party, which really someone should take the trading standards, given it hasn't represented the interests of people who Labour for some time now. But it's just fascinating how much things have shifted, and how now really, for now at least, it's a 2-horse race with the Conservatives barely even in the picture in many respects.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, I'd like to see Keir Starmer's debut in a working men's club. Probably the first time he's ever been to one. I mean, Candice, clearly Keir Starmer is rattled by this. He gave a speech on the day we're talking, warning that Farage would crash the economy like Liz Truss.
And that's the question you have to ask about Nigel Farage. Can you trust him? Can you trust him with your future? Can you trust him with your jobs? Can you trust him with your mortgages, your pensions, your bills?
It was quite a short speech, and yet Farage's name seemed to come up multiple times, which, obviously we know that if you're looking at the parliamentary arithmetic purely, it does seem slightly mad that Starmer's got this record large majority. Nigel Farage has 5 MPs, but that's who he's attacking, not the Conservative Party. That's who he feels most threatened by.
He is, and I think the local council elections must have rattled them just to sort of maybe see what could define the next election. I think Farage, I think Reform, they're being quite shrewd. I think they realise there's a very underserved constituency in this country, most of it in the Red Wall, where you sort of get small c conservatism, but people who are quite economically left. I mean, they don't have a problem with state spending. They really don't. They completely reject a lot of what Thatcher brought in when she sort of broke with the post-war consensus of Keynesianism. They don't like that. In fact, she's hated in the North. I mean, she's really hated. A lot of people will never, ever, ever vote Conservative because of Thatcher. Also, it's not just here. I think you see the same trends in the US. I think Donald Trump has similar instincts. I mean, he's okay with spending. I mean, he tried in 2018 with his big infrastructure bill. It was defeated in the Congress. You even see with what he talks about now. I mean, it looks like Doge might be dead. Donald Trump is happy to add to the deficit. I mean, these are the sort of the trends that we see. And a lot of it is to do with these new populist leaders trying to bring together these two coalitions, they're new working class coalitions that are being served more by the right than the left. And it's so new in many ways, yet it's bringing in historic conditions. And I think historic traditions, sorry. And I think that Reform UK has spotted that. They are capitalising on it. I think Keir Starmer has no idea, because I don't think he has any ideas, really. I mean, it's a very hackneyed thing to say about him, but it's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a broader trend, isn't it, Tom? I mean, you look at France as well. Marine Le Pen very much, attacking to the left on the economy. Protectionism as well is a big feature of these kind of populists. I mean, clearly Keir Starmer is trying to, make sort of signals rightwards with his immigration speech, but it's clear that he's really uncomfortable when he's talking about Britain becoming an island of strangers, whereas Farage will happily pal about with the, people outside the, British steel factory and say that he wants to nationalise steel. It sounds totally authentic when he says it, even if he was previously a sort of Thatcherite. To coin a journalistic cliche, Farage has parked his tanks on Labour's lawn.
No, absolutely. And I think it's so clear, as we've been talking about, that this is the gap in British politics, the gap in Western politics in many respects, that different parties are looking to pursue. No, it would be an overstatement to say that, reform because of some of these announcements this week are going to become, blue Labour or anything like that. But it nevertheless is an attempt to show that they're different to the kind of caricature that might be made of them by Labour, who are very keen to dismiss them as Thatcherites and a bunch of public schoolboys. I think it's telling how rattled Starmer is, that he's not only constantly calling Farage out by name, but constantly talking about his own background as the son of a toolmaker, if anyone hadn't heard that so far, and contrasting that with Farage's background, the son of a stockbroker going to Dulwich College and so on. And on the one hand, that's just incredibly insulting. It's not as if working class communities in the Red Wall or anywhere else are voting purely on the basis of this person's childhood was more like mine, and therefore, even if their policies are completely against my views, are completely against my interests, will be bad for my community, I'm just going to vote for them anyway. It's an absurdity, and that's clear on the face of it. But on the other hand, if Labour were to start talking about, the working class representation in Parliament, that's an argument that they're going to lose. I mean, you've seen over the years, certainly before Brexit, I think people who were previously in manual professions being members of Parliament crashed something like 3%. And that's in large part down to the fact that the Labour Party has become the party of lawyers, of people who work at NGOs, and to the extent there are some people who managed to make it through, who actually managed to be from a working class background, it's often people who've gone the more kind of university white collar route rather than people who've made their way through the trade unions, as was more typical. Even, various kind of former union figures who end up in Parliament these days, did trade union studies at university, got a plum job at Unite, and then ended up in the party that way. So it's fascinating, and it's telling that Labour are so rattled on this front, because as we all know, they haven't been the party of people who Labour for many decades now.